Good morning, gang. Welcome to Tuesday. I certainly won't say happy Tuesday. Uh, wanted to discuss all the fallout from yesterday's news and how it affects all of us, whether we're in the US, Europe, whatever it would be. I apologize. This is probably going to be a long video. And I know some of you guys don't like long ones, but there's a lot to unpack here. So grab yourself a cup of coffee or two. I want to kind of go over a bunch of the details on this. Now, as most of you probably know, Vladimir Putin recognized the two breakaway areas in eastern Ukraine yesterday, Lugansk People's Republic and Donetsk People's Republic, okay, which are not countries or anything like that. I mean, they're still part of Ukraine, all right, but the people there have decided, hey, we want to be independent. It doesn't quite work that way according to international law. You know, y'all know, like with Texas, the people can't just say, we don't want to be part of this country anymore, and poof, they're no longer part of the country. It doesn't work that way. So where this gets real hairy is with all the talk of war, you know, between Russia and Ukraine and everything like that. My personal belief is this probably, the one good side of this is this probably reduces the chance of war. Hear me out, because I know, again, I'm sitting on an island all by myself with this one. But I want to kind of go through a little bit of what's going on. Like I said, these two areas declaring their independence is no different than Texas saying, you know, we're no longer part of the United States. It doesn't work that way. But this morning, and bear with me because I've been going over all the news on this. It's about 5:45 right now, and I've been reading news, trying to get the latest details here for the last couple hours. I wanted to see what happened overnight. The parliaments, if you will, of these two republics have ratified a friendship alliance and military alliance with Russia. Okay, and Russian parliament is expected to ratify it on their end today. What this means is Russia will now give financial and military support to these two breakaway republics. And I know I keep using that term, but that's the only way I can describe them so you know what I'm talking about. Here's the problem, okay? If they give financial support, that's one thing. You know, countries can give their money pretty much anywhere they want as long as it stays within their own laws. You know, Russia makes their own laws, okay? They can give money to whoever the hell they want. How the rest of the world sees it is a different thing. The issue comes with the military support, because now if Russia says, well, we recognize these two regions as independent republics, and therefore, as Putin says, he's going to send peacekeepers in there, which means sending troops in or sending equipment. Let's say it's tanks, let's say it's artillery, whatever it would be. Russia is going to claim these are independent nations, we're sending our troops to an ally. Ukraine is going to say, that's our territory. No, that's an act of war, okay? It's no different than, using my Mexico-Texas one again, that Mexico comes up and says, we're going to establish a military presence in Texas because, you know, a lot of Texans speak Spanish and, you know, that we relate to them and everything like that. It doesn't work that way, okay? That's still sovereign U.S. territory. Regardless of the fact if Mexico recognized Texas as an independent nation, it doesn't matter. It doesn't make it so. You know, there's a little thing called international law. So we get into a big issue like that. And so now what you're going to have is who's doing what. Ukraine if there is a battle, Ukraine could make the case that Russia has invaded sovereign Ukraine territory and invaded. According to international law, that's correct. Russia could then say, if Ukraine comes back and does anything, they're attacking an ally of ours, we're going to defend. That's where a war could possibly happen. Now, how that works, who knows? But that's where things have ramped up. Chances are, because Kiev keeps saying that they are not going to invade or whatever, but that's what Russia is now trying to do. Russia is now trying to goad NATO and Ukraine to invade, where for the last 6 months, NATO and Ukraine have been trying to goad Russia. So Putin flipped the tables on everybody with this one. That's what I think his motive is. And I know everybody's saying, oh, he tries to put the USSR back together, and oh, these are ethnic Russians, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, well, that may be true. That's great. But, what's next? Is Putin going to now declare Brighton Beach as part of Russia because it's got a large Russian community in it? Get my point? Okay. So watching what the international response to this one was overnight, and most of it was expected. Some of it a little, maybe not. Syria, Bashar al-Assad, is going to recognize the two breakaway republics. Now, Syria is pretty much Russia's, for the most part, only ally in the world, so that doesn't really surprise us. However, here's some interesting ones. Iran is not, okay? Iran is obviously not siding with NATO, okay? But they're kind of going to stay, what's the word I'm looking for, independent or neutral on this one. A quote from their foreign ministry spokesman: unfortunately, NATO interference and provocative moves led by the United States have made conditions in the region more complicated. However, they're watching developments in Ukraine and call on all sides to refrain from any action that will increase tensions. Yeah, we're hearing from the Iranians not to start a fight. Figure that one out. Good. China. This was the most interesting one. All right. Top Chinese diplomat called on all parties to exercise restraint, recognize the importance of implementing the principle of indivisibility of security, ease the situation, and resolve differences through dialogue and negotiation. So China is saying, do not go to war here. Do not have a fight. What does that mean? That means, as I said before, Russia is going to become an island if they do any of this. They are going to be persona non grata, country non grata around the world if they do this, because Russia is not going to be able to survive in the world economy with just Syria as an ally. And this will significantly hurt the Russian population and significantly hurt the European population and somewhat hurt the rest of the Western world, okay? Because believe it or not, we are tied to Russia for certain things. This whole disaster with what is going on is going to inevitably lead to sanctions, okay? We know that every country, the EU, NATO, the United States, Great Britain, everybody has all said they are going to impose sanctions on Russia. If Russia did anything, Russia's now done something, we can expect sanctions today, okay? What will start is Russia's going to get cut off from the world financial system. Now, you know as well as I do that the United States dollar is still the reserve currency of the world. All international trade is settled in dollars. What is going to happen is the initial sanctions are going to bar U.S. banks from processing any financial transactions for Russian banks, which therefore means that the Russians will not be able to buy and or sell anything on the international markets. Now, sure, could there be backroom deals? I mean, we know that Russia's got some stuff going on with China saying, okay, we'll settle this in our own currencies or whatever. In this respect, China may be, here's a chance for us to get the yuan as a second reserve currency. Speculation there, okay? Just my thought. Brussels has said the same thing. Great Britain has said the same thing, that there's going to be no transactions done between Russia and the rest of the world. That causes a huge problem, okay? Now, what does it cause for Russia? Massive inflation. The Russian ruble this morning hit 80.5 to 1 to the US dollar and 91 to 1 to the euro, okay? That's near a historic low. The last time this happened was the 2016 oil price crash. And remember, Russia's economy is basically all oil. They're a one-trick pony on this. So this is going to drive the costs up for your average Russian for everything, okay? So food's more expensive. It's not that the price is going to go up, the spending power of your dollar, or of your ruble, and we've talked about that a lot. So, you'll go back to seeing a lot like you did in the Soviet era, in the after the wall came down, after the Soviet Union fell, where Russians are trying to trade rubles for foreign currency. However, the problem is, if the banks can't get foreign currency, now what this does is open up a huge black market. That gets dangerous, okay? And Mrs. P and I have had long conversations about the Russian people knowing about currency exchange. I mean, it's funny. I will bet that most Americans couldn't tell you the exchange rate between the dollar and the euro, the dollar and the yuan, the dollar and the yen, the dollar and the peso off the top of their head. You go ask any Russian, and they know every day what it is to the dollar, what it is to the euro. Because your average Russian participates in currency exchange a lot, trying to protect whatever money they have. All right, so this is going to cause a problem there, and now you're going to wind up with a black market. Okay. So how does this affect all of us? Well, let's take a look at what it did to oil prices so far today. Brent crude is nearly $100 a barrel, guys. Okay. Guess what? All the talk that we have said, that I said $5 a gallon of gas, I'm starting to hear people say $7 a gallon of gas this year. Now, how does that affect Europe? How does that affect the United States? Gee, remember I told you guys, the number 3 country that we get our oil from is Russia. Guess what's not coming anymore? All right, so we've just lost one of our biggest importers of petroleum products. Gas prices are going to go up, which means, anything that's petroleum related. Do we want to take that out a little bit further? Sure. We all know what Nord Stream 2 is, pumping natural gas into Europe, correct? Okay, natural gas prices are going to go up. The natural gas supply is going to go down if the Russians cannot supply natural gas to Western Europe because of sanctions. Guess what? The people in Western Europe are going to suffer with significantly higher prices for heating fuel. Fortunately, winter's coming to an end, okay? But anything else that's used for natural gas, which, want to know what one of those big ones is? Fertilizer, okay? It's a byproduct. Now, the urea. So what does that do? Russia is the number 1 exporter of fertilizer in the world. Gee, that means any other country, if all these sanctions are coming on, cannot buy Russian fertilizer. Oops, Now we have a huge food problem around the world, as if we already don't have one, guys. Okay. You're talking about farmers right now not being able to get fertilizer, not being able to get potting mix to start their plants to put out in the field. Okay. Because of supply chain issues. Farmers are, going, the fertilizer prices are already crazy. This is going to make it worse. So now what do you have? Farmers are going to try to plant crops, if they try to plant crops and not fertilize them. Well, that is going to drastically reduce yield, which is going to drastically increase prices. And it's also going to drastically reduce the availability around the world for people to eat. Now you have that problem. Continuing on the financial part of this one, okay? The financial sector in the markets is going to get clobbered. Why? Because sanctions on Russia are going to mean that the Russian companies that have been borrowing money from Western banks, which they do a lot, okay, now they're not going to be able to pay those loans back. So now what do you have? Now you have a increased portfolio of bad loans for U.S. or European banks because the Russian companies can't pay it back. Okay. And again, still we get into that dollar ruble, can't use the currency type thing. Makes it an even bigger problem. So, if you own stock in the financial sector, get ready to take a hit. Now, going back to the military side of things, Putin's ordered peacekeepers to go into Ukraine. There's a little problem with this. Peacekeepers only can go into a country when they're invited to go into a country. Let's look at all the stuff going on in Canada and all the talk about, the German UN troops running around Ottawa and stuff like that. They were invited into the country by Trudeau. Zelensky certainly hasn't invited Russian peacekeepers in. So Russian troops, again, going into Ukraine, because again, by international law, they are not independent republics, that is still Ukraine territory. That is an invasion of foreign soil. That's an act of war. How it plays out, we'll see. The most interesting part of everything here was Putin's speech yesterday. And the whole Minsk agreement and everything, everybody's saying, Putin keeps trying to blame Ukraine for breaking the Minsk agreement. Ukraine's not the one breaking the Minsk agreement. It's Russia, okay? It's Donetsk, it's Lugansk, okay? They are the ones that are not following this. You had, what did I say, over the weekend, there were, 7 or 8 or 9 violations of the Minsk agreement, okay? Artillery used or something like that. I mean, they were violations, but they weren't massive ones. There were 870 on Sunday. Okay, so that's where, now this is starting to ramp up. These freedom fighters, I won't say freedom fighters because it's not what they are. These separatists that are doing this, they're basically gangs that are running around the city, okay? Think Bloods, Crips, that sort of stuff, okay? Just doing whatever they can to terrorize the people and take control of the areas and stuff. What I found real interesting in Putin's speech is Putin said, Ukraine is not interested in peaceful solutions. They want to start a blitzkrieg. Really? I don't see Ukraine soldiers waiting to go into Russia. I don't see Zelensky saying, we're going to send peacekeepers onto Russian sovereign territory. I'm sorry. The only one that wants to start a blitzkrieg there, Vlad, is you. Okay? You're the one talking about sending troops into Ukraine. I don't care about you calling it the LPR or the DPR. It doesn't matter to me. It's still Ukraine. You know, this makes zero sense what is going on. There's got to be something else that is coming. And for the life of me, I can't figure it out. Okay. And not that I'm the smartest guy in the world anyway, but the people in the State Department can't figure it out either. They just make up a lie as they go. But overall, there are no winners in this. Okay. I've racked my brain trying to find who this is good for. Is it good for the Russian people? No. They're going to get crushed with their economy. Is it good for the European people? No. It's going to affect them. Is it good for the North American people? No, it's going to increase our gas prices. It also is certainly going to increase everybody's stress level. Okay, there's no question about that. Is it good for the Ukrainians? No, the last thing I really want is bullets flying overhead as I try to go to the store. Okay. There are no winners in this. This is starting, you're starting to play games with people's lives because I know, everybody knows. We're the pawns. The kings and queens on the back of the chessboard certainly aren't going to be the ones with the bullets going over the head. Putin's not going to be out there on the front line with the Kalashnikov going, okay, I'm gonna do this. He's going to send troops in, okay, who their job is to go and potentially die for something like this. You have the Ukrainian citizens who might support this, might not support this, whatever would be. But I mean, would you have 700,000 people or something flood Rostov in the last couple of days trying to get out of, because of all the mortar shells going off, artillery and bullets and everything like that? This is going to be a human crisis that is going to affect everybody in the Western world, as well as Russia, Ukraine. China seems to be sitting a little bit on the sidelines, which is good. All right. Last thing, I'm glad I didn't see China come up like Syria and say, gee, we support Russia on this one. That would have been, all bets are off. Look out, here it comes. The downside is we're going right back into a Cold War with this. And Putin is going to isolate Russia from the rest of the world, as sad as that is. Like I said to Mrs. P, thank God she's here. Okay. We got her here when we did, because if it was 5 years later and all those people who are in the same boat that we were now, I can't imagine them trying to go through this, because you can't get out of Russia and get to the United States right now. I mean, maybe if you got to a different country, but good luck getting a visa. All right, the travel is going to be extremely different. So where do these people go? That's the problem. And Mrs. P is already here, so thank God for that. All right, sorry guys, this is 25 minutes long, but a lot to unpack. This is all new. We're supposed to see what the sanctions are today. Then we're going to start knowing how it affects us. But, you look at how it will affect those of us here in the States, what we get from Russia. Like I said, oil products, okay, that's going to affect our gas prices. Precious metals, okay, you start cutting that off. We should see gold and silver go up. Okay, I mean, gold's over $1,900, silver's back around 24 again. So, we're still seeing that. I told you, we'll probably see 2,000 gold this year. This makes it very likely. But we also get iron and steel from Russia, and then, like I said, the aforementioned fertilizers. We are going to feel the pain of this too. Sanctions aren't going to affect Vladimir Putin. Sanctions aren't going to affect Joe Biden. They don't care. They're still going to be eating their steak and lobster and caviar and vodka and Jell-O pudding. The rest of us, You have to tighten that belt just a little bit more. And we need to figure out how to work our way around it. If you've got any way to stock fuel, do it. Okay. Get yourself a few gas cans. At least get yourself 20, 25 gallons of gas if you've got somewhere to put it. You live in an apartment, I understand you can't. Okay. But keep your car topped off. Do whatever you can that way. Fertilizers, again, I've talked ad nauseum about making your own fertilizers. If you can't do that, don't want to do that, if you see it at the store, buy it. Even if you don't think you're going to use it this year, fertilizer doesn't go bad fast. All right? Buy it, throw it in the garage, throw it in the shed, whatever it is, and you can use it next year. I'm still using fertilizer I bought 2 years ago. That blood meal that I showed you the other day, that's stuff I bought last year. I've still got half a bag of it. It's still good. Okay. Certainly got it a lot cheaper last year than I would have this year. Start thinking about how this is going to affect us. Start going back and remembering what happened in the 60s and the 70s with the Cold War. I'm not talking about bunkers in the backyard and hiding under your desk. I'm talking about oil embargoes and things like that happened. The tension that was in the air with everything. Granted, yes, I know the oil embargo. You guys will say, oh, that was Iran. Okay. Yeah. It's not. Look at the bigger picture. Don't look at the microcosms. We're not politicians here. We can think past this. But, guys, it's going to get worse before it gets better. I've said that over and over and over. Just keep putting stuff away, because we don't know what's going to happen next. We have a lot of loose cannons in politics around the world that they are not the ones who are going to have their lives disrupted. We are. And it's up to us to make sure we're as taken care of as we can, because the government is not going to be here to help. Talk to you later. Pinball out.